Hi everybody, welcome along. Nigel here, Nigel's Modelling Bench, and this is the build as promised of this lovely little kit from Kitty Hawk. And this is going to be part one. I don't know how many parts it's going to be. I don't know how detailed I'm going to get with it all, but I'm going to basically build one truck first. I don't know which one, probably the cargo truck, but I'll build one first and then build the other one after, rather than do them both together. Anyway, that's the plan at the moment. Things may change. So basically this is going to be a build with paint and everything, and kind of, as I've said before, I always tend to, with my kits, I tend to pick up the instructions, look ahead and look at what we're going to need to do. If you've got any major tanks and stuff that are going together, you know, things that are going to be glued together, halves like fuel tanks and stuff like that. Like here we've got a fuel tank, the engine halves here, you know, basically bits and pieces that you can put together now and then let them dry and then deal with the seams when you need to. Because otherwise you find you get to this point, you put the fuel tank together, it's got great big gaps, and you're just waiting for that to go off before you can or want to proceed. So that's what I've done. And I've also gone in and filled those massive ejector pin holes that were in the chassis. As you can see here, I filled them in with, I mixed some super glue with talcum powder, filled them in with that, sanded them down, let that all shrink back, and then put some Mr. Surfacer in the top. And as you can see, what we've got there is basically we've got the great big ejector pin marks filled in. You don't need to do it, no one's ever really going to see it, but it's just the way I like to do things. I've also done the other one as well. I've got the other chassis here in the box. There's the fuel tank I was talking about. I should have done two of them, I've just done the one. There is a bit of a sink on each side, so, well, on one side anyway, so I've done that. That's all been filled with Mr. Surfacer, sanded out, so that's all good to go. Transfer box, just a pair of pieces of plastic. Quite a lot of cleanup required on those. There's some big ejector pin marks on the insides. I built up one of the ladders. You can see the construction here in the manual. You can see you've got various rungs and things, and you've got these 8 rungs going in here, and at the bottom you've got these 2 little different rungs here, C28. Just so you can see what I'm looking at, not being glossed out, but you can see that this part here is C28, so I think those are C17, I think. So I've left them off for now, just left the gap at the bottom, but I think they're C17, but there's a mistake in the instructions there. So that's done. Engine halves are together. If you remember from the review, there was a massive sink mark in the side of this prop shaft, or in the side of this towing eye. In hindsight, probably what we better do is cut that section out, replace that piece with a piece of plastic tube and glue it back together, but I don't know, we'll see. So there we are, guys, that's it. Now I've also gone on and taken all the parts off, the sprues. I've also glued those together. These are going to go on the end of this dolly. This towing dolly is going to be very, very flimsy because it's perfectly to scale, a la typical Bronco fashion, but when things are to scale, they're generally very weak. So we moan if they're weak and we moan if they're over scale. So I'd rather have them to scale and fragile. So that's going to go on the back of there like so. And we've got all the other bits and pieces of the chassis. These are all C parts, except for one B part here. And that's going to be like the torque reaction rods for the axles there, going on the inside of one of the chassis legs. So let me get myself prepared, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about how we're going to put this chassis together. Okay, so first things first, all the parts are now ready to start gluing together. And the first part I was going to glue was this one here. This is the torque reaction rod, B58. And as you can see here, we've got a hole in the chassis, an arrow, and a pin on the back of that part. So there's the hole in the chassis. The arrow is gone. And there's no pin on the back of the part, so there's nowhere to fit that, nowhere to guide that in. So rather than have it in there and have it pulling the axles about, I'm going to leave it for now, and then I'm going to slot it in after the axles are glued in. What I may even do is glue it to the top of the axles, and then when I put the axles in, it'll just go in and sit there. So that would stay out rather than have it all pulled about later. So what we need to do is get on with the chassis now. For some reason, we got here one cross member going in there. They're showing it there. It is there. So one of these C11 parts here. Now for this chassis assembly, I'm going to use Extra Thin Quick Setting. Reason being, quick setting is basically the same as Extra Thin. It's a bit hotter. It's obviously got more of the solvent in it, and it dries a lot faster. Obviously that's why it's called quick setting. It's no stronger or anything, but what's very good about it is when you're doing small parts like this, you can glue them on and literally let them go in seconds and they'll stay there. What you mustn't do is go back and reapply the glue, because it's so hot it will melt the glue that's already there and your part will fall off. So we've all been there where you've got like a mirror or something you're trying to glue on the side. You don't want to use super glue, so you put a drop of glue on there, you hold it in place, and then you move your hand and it just starts to sag down. With this stuff it will stay there because it doesn't form a big gooey mess that it will just stay sloppy. It goes off very, very quickly. So that is the beauty of the extra thin cement. I've seen all sorts of different explanations. I've even seen a YouTube video about this being used as like a setting agent, almost like, you know, when you use your super glue and then you spray it with an activator. The guy was trying to explain that that's what that is for extra thin, and it's not. It's a glue on its own. It just dries faster, and it's really good for stuff like this, because as I'll show you now, you can see we've got this pin is going to go in this hole. Okay, so I can put a drop in there now, put this pin in, give it a twist just to seat it, and it stays there. Okay, now if we used ordinary extra thin, it probably wouldn't stay there. It's got like an immediate bite to it, but it'll still be flexible. You can still move it around, but it's just staying in place rather than just falling over. So what we want to do is now get the other parts on the chassis, and we want to make sure that this is kind of square. So here we go. It's got a bit of resistance now, so we can set it in position. So we'll use the end of our rule and we'll set that square on there. And this basically is a little bit of a tutorial, if you like. It's kind of how I do my chassis. So getting it square there is going to be a case of looking at it. You don't have enough area there to get this on to make it square. So the best thing to do is get your rule on there. And you can see on the rule you've got these vertical lines. So if you get your rule onto the chassis and hold it flat on there, and then you can sort of eye up and make sure that it looks square. And the time you take now to make sure everything is square will pay dividends in the end, because if your chassis is bowed or twisted or whatever, your wheels won't sit on the ground, the bits that go on top won't fit properly, you know. It's all and if you have got a twist in the chassis at the back, you can glue your cargo bed on and clamp it down and everything, and then you'll find the front is all hanging up in the air. So get it right now, and then you'll know you have no problems. So let's come on to this side. So we've got an 11 and a 12 going in here. So we've got C11 going in there and a C12 going in there. Okay, so 12 is the thin spindly one. These holes are way too big. There we go. And that's the beauty of the quick setting. It just goes in there and stays there rather than flops about. Okay, so coming now with the rule on this one. Make sure we've got the rule flat on the surface, and we'll check that it's all square and everything. There we go. And then the same with this one. There we are. The other thing you can do is use your the grid on your modelling mat if you have one. You can look at it like that. You can sort of square things up. Okay, and then looking at it this way, looking down on it, what we can do is get our rule on there flat, and then we can look along and we can see that one needs to come up. There we go. I'm happy with that. So that's those two in. We need to work quite quickly because we need to and then the next one's going to go in there. Oops. One of the other downsides of this glue, it evaporates very, very quickly. So if I put a drop on the end of one of these shafts, come here, you'd find it'd be dry before you get near it. So that's that one in place. Let's grab and roll again, make sure it's square. Just like so, and then eye it up there, that's way over. Just like that, way over there. There we go. So that's that done. And then we're going to add C5, which is a sort of body mount by the look of it. So that's going in that way with the shorter bit on that side. So that's going to fit lovely in that slot. So what I'll do is I will put this in place, hold it with my thumb, and then just brush some glue into the joint. That'll stay there like that. And then we've got another C11 going in here. Now we can sort of visually line it up with the others. And then we've got a C15 going in here. And we've got a ridge on that that's going to face upwards. So that's going to slot into there. Like so. Drop a glue in there to hold that in place. And then we've got a rear cross member going in that can go in afterwards. Okay, so we're ready now to put these chassis rails together. So this could be a bit fiddly. Now I know that this part here was the tightest. There's a piece of flash on there that I've missed. Just clean that off. And then slot that in together. What I'm trying to do is get this rear cross member in. There we go. So I've got the rear cross member. That's holding everything together because it's a nice snug fit. So what we can do is now walk down the chassis and put everything together as we go. Just like so. And then a pair of tweezers can come in handy to pull things about. Just like that. We can ignore the front for now. We can get some glue in here. And get it all held together, and then we can come up to the front. We can put that little 12 in there. Okay, and then just put some glue on them, make sure they're in place. And we're just going to make sure everything's nicely glued in. Right, so that's our chassis together, and as you can see it's all still flexible. We can still move it all about. Now the first thing you want to check is that the chassis rail is actually straight, and on this particular model it's quite difficult because there's nowhere that's unobstructed by a raised area. So all we can really do is do it by eye and lay the rule on top of there. We want to make sure first of all the chassis is straight, so that's okay, one side straight, and then we want to make sure it's parallel. Now I can show you exaggerated, you can see that it's like this. Now we want to basically push one side and get everything parallel and square. So if we put a rule on the inside here on one side, we should be able to view it and see that it's actually square. Or you can put the chassis down on your bench, on your cutting mat, and line things up with the grid and look at it that way. Okay, now I'm going to have to go off camera and do this because I need to get my head over it, which means you won't be able to see what I'm doing. Maybe you'll be okay. So I can line the chassis up like so and make sure that everything is square. And then when I'm happy, just give it a little nudge together, make sure everything's gone together nicely, particularly this rear cross member because it was quite a tight fit. I've just noticed there's a bit of a sprue nib in there that I've missed. Just get in there with my Infini P sander just like that. Right. So now what I'm going to do is grab my 1, 2, 3 blocks. These are steel blocks with holes in them. And what we're going to do is lay the chassis on here. And because we've got these 4 pins here, we've got this raised area here, we've got these engine mounts here. We need to make sure that we've got clearance all around. So those 2 pins there are in a hole. Yeah, the problem there is going to be these engine mounts, which are sat proud. So what we can do then is grab a couple of bits of plastic card or a couple of rules or whatever. Where are all my rules gone? That's a bit annoying. Basically what we can do then, we can put this under here actually. So we put that one under there, and we'll put that one under there. Alright, and then I can put another 1, 2, 3 block on top, and just leave that to dry and let it all cure, and it will dry completely flat, completely straight and solid. Okay, now I'm going to go off camera now and manipulate it a bit so that I can see what's going on. But you get the idea. Get everything square. Use your, if you don't have a square, use the end of your rule to check everything is square. Okay, you can see when you're looking at, what we're looking at is the angle here, which is the square. We're getting it in there just to check that it is actually square, as you can see there. Okay, and then once you're happy that everything's square, to make sure it's flat and not twisted, get it on a flat surface, pack it out so that none of the protrusions on the surface of the chassis are going to cause any issues, and then weight it down and leave it to dry. And this goes for 25th scale trucks, this goes for anything you're doing. You may want to get yourself some longer blocks for the bigger trucks and stuff, but that's basically how we're going. So that's that for now, and I'm going to leave that to dry. Well, I'm going to leave it to dry as far as you're concerned on the camera, and then when we come back we'll look at moving forward. Just quickly, I've discovered that I can move the chassis forward and get these 4 holes in those 2 holes and get that cross member in there, and that saves me having to jack anything up then with shims and stuff. So just get those in there, push it back, and then put the weight on top just like that and let that go off. So whoops, so we'll leave that now for a good few hours and let it go solid. Right, here we are then. This is like 3 hours later now. I've been doing a little bit of work and other bits and pieces and stuff. So the chassis is now nice and rigid. That number 3 has come out, as you can see there. So we're not going to worry about that too much. That'll just pop in. I'll just pop back in there, that's all right. So what we've got here is the chassis is all done and all rigid and square and flat and everything. So it should all sit down with no, if you hold the back down, they shouldn't rattle. If they do rattle, it means it's twisted, and what you can do is twist it the other way until it doesn't rattle, and then clamp it down flat again. But that's all nice and square and ready to go. So when we look in the instructions, the next stage here is fitting all the axles on the transfer box and everything. So we've got the rear axle assembly here. We're fitting the diffs and the prop shafts and these plates on the end of the diffs, and then they go down into the chassis, and as you can see there's a pin down in here. You've got a pin in the chassis to go up into the axle, and likewise on the leaf springs at the front we've got pins there which go up into the axle on the front. Okay, so then we come down to the front, we assemble the front differential into the axle, drop the axle down onto the leaf springs, put this cross member in and put the exhaust in, and that's that step finished. Okay, so the Sharper Rider most you will notice I've already built a set, or built a rear end, and I've got a rear end here ready to go. Reason being, I want to show you something. If ever there's been a case where the guy who designed Sprue C was in a different planet, speaking a different language in a different time zone to the guy that designed Sprue B, this is it. Because here, as you can see, on these suspension mountings, as per the instructions, we've got a pin. Okay, you can see there's a plastic pin there, and it's central around the mounting there, and it's central in the bottom of the arc. And then when it comes to actually fitting this in, these go down in here like so, and you can see that on here we've got a pin. So you've got this pin here goes into that pin there. That's not going to work, is it? So what you could do is cut that off and drill it. What I'm intending to do is just cut both off and just glue it in without any pin, and then I'll get the ability to adjust it then. But how ridiculous is that? So that's pretty bad. Then we come along to the front. We think, well, we'll put the front axle in. Oh, bear in mind when you assemble these, it looks like they're identical forwards and aft, but you see that on we've got these filler plugs here. They go aft, so you can see these little points here. Where my finger is now. Okay, there's nothing on the fronts of the diff housings, but they are there. So, or the final drive housing, should I say. So they point rearwards, okay, according to the instructions. So that's going to go together like that. Now on the front, you can see again they've got these pins on the springs, and then you've got these lovely, beautiful, detailed shackles and everything with the mounting plates to go around the leaf springs, yeah? But the hole that goes into there for the pin to go into, you can see is offset inwards. And these pins are central. So it doesn't fit. So again, you need to cut them off, or you could fill them in and re-drill them, whatever you want to do. But that's just a couple of observations. So that's something we'll deal with in a moment. So that's that. The other thing is when we come to the exhaust, as you can see, the plastic part has just got a blank end on it. If I just turn it over to show you, you can see the plastic part here on the bottom at the kit has just got a blank end. But what we can do is actually drill that out and make it look a lot more realistic. So I'll show you how I do that, just for the newer guys out there. So I come along with a sharp point and just find roughly the centroid of that. Okay, so there we go, got that. So we can drill in there just like so, and we can look to see that we're actually in the middle. So when we know we're in the middle, drill a little bit deeper and then start to favour what I'm doing, I'm making the drill go sort of on that angle so that I don't come straight through the side. So I can start to favour the drill that way. I don't want to go through, I just want to take some plastic away. Okay, just to make a hollow, and then what we can do is once we've got the hollow in there, we can keep turning the drill and we can just move it around just to sort of open up the surface, and then we end up with this kind of thing. This plastic colour is not good for this camera. This camera doesn't like it. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper because I can. And that's not saying because I can like being a big head, I'm saying because I can because I've got more depth there. And then just keep running around with the drill, just pushing away to the side. Okay, and then once we're happy that we're roughly there, then we can go around the edges with a knife and just scrape away some material from the edges, and then you can see you end up with a much more authentic looking exhaust pipe. And obviously I'll do that some more of that now under the magnifier because I can't see that with these. I need to go to the opticians actually get my eyes tested again. I've broken through the side now. This is the problem with working with old glasses. So there we go. So that's basically how you do that. So putting all this together is really straightforward. You've basically got this here with these holes in the side. So I'll get my extra thing quick setting again. And we've got these discs here. These are parts B37 and B63. So that's just going to go in there. So I'm just going to hold that in place and just run a drop of glue in there. And that'll hold that one. And then we'll plop this one on here. Get a drop of glue in place. Drop that one on there. Okay, so that's them done. And then for the front one it's the same. I've already done that one, this one here. Just drop that on there. Just like so. There we go, that's in. And then the front, I would suggest leaving the front off until the axle is installed. And then if there needs to be any angles, because when this goes in to the front axle like so, there's no location for it, so it can swivel around. So if it needs to be over here, or if it needs to be over here, it saves you bending the prop shaft. So I would fit that after the axle and the transfer box are fitted in, personally. And I'll do that and you'll see me do it. Now for this one here, as I say, these filler plugs here, they're sort of welded on or cast on lumps with a bung in the top, and that's where they fill the oil for the differential. They go rearwards, so you want your prop shaft facing forwards. So that's just going to glue in like that. But what I'm going to do on this one is leave it until I've dealt with this. In fact, I'll do that now. So I can cut that off of there, cut that off of there, and then just go around the sides. And then I'm just going to take my knife and just like that, just clean that up and then get my sanding stick in there. In fact, I'll use one of my PE ones. Here we go. This is one of the Infini PE. They're like a stainless steel. They're really good because they're flat and they're hard. So just going to sand that there, get rid of those pins. There we go, job done. And then we can come into the chassis, and again we can cut these pins out to the best of our ability. Might be easier with a knife actually to get in there. Just go in there with the tip of what you might call a number 11 blade if you've got X-Actos, but this is Swan Morton number 10A. Just go in there and remove that pin, just like so. And then if you want to, you could come in with a round file there, and just sort of make sure everything's nice and squared up. And then that will then drop in like so. Okay, you can eye it up, get it central, whatever. And then also with that pin removed, you can actually make sure then that all three axles contact the ground. So if you don't glue that in now and leave that until you've actually got the wheels on, then you can put the chassis down and glue it then. And then if it needs to be like that, say, or like that, whatever, it can find its own center and you can glue it in place. So that's that done. And obviously these parts here that we talked about, these B58s, they're supposed to glue in where are they going to glue in? They're supposed to glue in before we do this, but I'm actually going to... Which way is this going? Yeah, it's going that way. So let's just see if this works. Let's put a drop of glue in there. And a drop of glue in there. There we go, just like that. And then we'll put this in with the flange facing outwards. And we'll fit these diffs. That's also worth noting, if you put your diffs in the wrong way, your axle will not fit. Drop in just to hold them in place. Just like so. And then that will drop in there. Just like that. Oops. And now you can see that bracket that I put in it that I said we'd leave out, we can leave. It's lucky we left that out because now we can adjust the angle without that bracket bothering us. So there we go. So that's that one built up. You've also got the transfer case brake, the transmission brake to go on, like that's there as well. That's part B6. B6 is going on there. So there we go. So I'll do the same to this axle now and get rid of those pins and go from there. Right, so these front axles, you can see here I've done one, and what I've done is plugged the holes that were out of position and then re-drilled them so they'll fit over the pins on the leaf springs which come as part of the chassis. So that fits over there now, lovely. So that all goes together nicely, and as you can see, it's all very nicely moulded and beautifully detailed. But it's just like I say, the guy that designed the axles was on a different time zone to the guy that designed the rest. So there we are. So how did I do that? Basically, I came along with some plastic rod. I didn't have any millimetre square, which I can't believe. I thought I had loads of it. But basically, I just took a piece of 1.5mm round, and then just all you do is put it on the bench, scrape the top, turn it over, and you'll feel it fall on its flat. Scrape it again, and then try and feel where that flat is, and then go 90 degrees, scrape again, turn it over, scrape again, and you should end up with something that roughly represents a square. And for something like this, it's absolutely fine. Then dip it in super glue into the hole. I wouldn't suggest using poly cement, because what you'll do is end up softening the plastic in this area, which means you'll be waiting for an age for it to dry so you can drill it. So I would definitely use super glue. And then all I've done then, again, same as with the exhaust, come in with a sharp point, mark the centre. So you're looking for the centre along the axle of the axis here, and the centre between the two shackles there. So just mark that. Go in first of all with a 0.5 drill, tiny little drill. If you try and use a bigger drill, it'll just run off into that hole you've just made or just filled, and then drill it out. And what you're ending up with is that. Okay. And the reason I decided to do this is just to give the axle a bit more of a positive location and give it a bit of a better chance of staying in place. So that can go on there like that. Okay. And then what I'm going to do with my calipers, this is an optional thing, but it's just something worth checking. I'm just going to check from the top of that. Let's do for the top of the chassis. Yeah, let's do it from the engine mount so I can get a flat on there. So that's 14.9 there to those spring shackles. And then that's 14.83, so that's good enough. And then all I can do then is come in with some of the extra thin quick setting and put a drop in each side. Make sure you get plenty of so it penetrates nicely. And then again, another optional extra is to come along with a pair of tweezers, which I'm not prepared for, and just give it a little squeeze just to make sure it's all gone together nicely. There you are. So that's that. So that is our front axle in place. Remember, I've left the prop shaft off because we can then align it how we want to. So we can leave that to dry and look at building something else. So I said I was only going to build one chassis. I decided to do them both. So here you can see both of them there. So this one here I haven't glued it on yet, but you can see I've got the axles sat on a couple of sanding sticks. I may find something a little bit more parallel. I've actually assembled some wheels, and I was going to put it on some wheels, but the trouble is they are quite sloppy on their axles. If you look here, you can see this is the rear wheels, and they're quite sloppy, so they just keep wanting to fall off. I could blue tack them on or put them on with a bit of white glue, but I'd rather just do this, to be quite honest with you. The other thing was, if you remember in the review, I talked about having these front wheels steering because you've got I meant to pick the other one up actually, because you've got the ball on the end with the clip-in sort of kingpin. It clips in like so that's sort of easy, but if you look, it really is very, very floppy. So really what you want to be doing is just treating this as a means of positioning the wheels so you can set them at a certain angle. It's not really a means of having them steering, because otherwise you're going to have it looking like a stanced lowrider thing that they do these days. But it's not very good at all. So not really much good for setting it up on the wheels. The other thing I thought about was these tyres. If you remember in the review, I said they're extremely hard. They're almost like black plastic. They are that hard. I mean, that's pretty much all the strength I've got, and you can see they're very difficult to squeeze. But what I found was I cut the actual centre webbing out. You can see they come with this thick webbing in the centre. I cut that out, left a nice clean rim, and because we all like a clean rim, don't we? You don't want a cluttered rim in your life. So clean that out. Probably just put a bit of sandpaper in there or something and just go round and just give that a clean out. But basically what I did was run under a hot tap, got them hot, as hot as I could stand on my fingers, and then they became very soft. So that's the thing to do. We'll get them hot, put them over the wheels, and then we'll paint them, or maybe paint the wheels first or whatever. But I don't like assembling wheels into the tires, because invariably the tires will actually pull the wheels apart. So that's why I'd rather build the wheels and perhaps paint them and whatever, and then put them on and put the tires on afterwards. But if you put them on with them, I tried putting one on when it was cold, and it squeezed over, but it would have taken all the paint off if the rim was painted, and then it really struggled to get it out again. So yeah, but I tried it hot water, makes them softer, and they come back just as hard after they've cooled down. So that's the answer there. So what we're going to have to do is use these sanding sticks, or maybe get a couple of the same sanding sticks but with less use, so they've got a sharper corner on them. There we go. So these are the Infini Matador sticks. They're absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to plonk that in there. Okay, and then I'm holding the axle to support the chassis, and then making sure that the actual sanding stick is on the spindle part of the axle and not on the actual moulded raised area. We need a slight taper inwards because the front track is obviously narrower than the rear. So we've got that one in, and I'll just get this one in at the back here. Oh dear, this is fun. Probably interesting to watch as well, you guys. About as interesting as watching paint dry. Right, so the front's in, back's in, there we go. Oh, come on. Right, so now we've got all four axles kind of on the ground. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of pressure on there, and then I'm going to somehow, it looks like you can't do it, so I'm going to hold this here and get some extra thin in there. I'm going to get a bit on the prop shaft as well. So just get some extra thin in there. I'm putting quite a lot in because I want it to stay quite soft and pliable for a second. I'll just slide that under there and make sure everything's good. And we've got good contact, and I don't think I'll chance as much weight as that 321 block, but I've got another steel block here. I'm just going to plonk that on there. Oh, that one's come off the edge. Come on. Right. So again, making sure the sanding stick is not upon the raised portion of the axle. There we go. So we're sat on all 6 points there. So I'm just going to leave that for half an hour, whatever, and let it go off. Okay, pressing forward, moved on quite a bit now. Axles are all in, as you can see, and everything's all dried, and all the axles are going to end up level, I hope. As we talked about already, the front wheels are really floppy on those axles, so we'll have to do something about that. But I'm not going to glue them on until I've got the tyres and everything on, because I want to make sure that everything's nice and level. And also, once you glue the wheels on, getting the tyres on means you're likely to break them, especially with these tight tyres. Remember, we talked about we're going to heat them up and everything. So yeah, wheels are all made up now, but as you can see, they're all a bit floppy, and the front wheels in particular, well, they're ridiculous. They really are bad. So we're just going to sort of push on and get everything done. So both of these little ladders are built up now. I've got a piece of plastic. I don't know what this part is for. There's two of them in the kit, B22 I think it, or C22. Two of them in there, I don't know what it's for, so I'll keep them anyway. And then we've got these two lovely boarding ladders. Oops, chucking them across the place. They really are lovely, beautifully little flimsy little things. So I thought I'd build both of them because they're a bit of fun. And yeah, really enjoyed putting them together. So they're flimsy and need to be put to one side. This towing dolly, I'm not sure if I've already talked about this. If I have, I'll edit it out. But yeah, lovely little bit of kit. It's got all the little flimsy wheels and everything on it here. It is very fragile, but it's to scale. So it's you know, we moan about things being fragile. we moan about things if they're not scale. So I've also noticed I've got some seam work to do in there. I haven't cleaned that up very well, have I? So we'll get that done. But basically, yeah, very, very nice little towing dolly, I guess you call it. Biggest downside is this great big sink mark in here, which we'll see how it looks under primer. But maybe okay, we'll see. But it's beautiful. This colour plastic, guys, as I've said, it's awful for the camera. It really can't cope. Yeah, very nicely done indeed. And it's all looks, to me, it looks proper. It looks logic that they would actually sort of pull this off by hand. You know, they tow it into position with a truck, and then it's going to rest on the front there. Then they locate this in the undercarriage of the aircraft, and then reverse the truck in and lift the front up so the wheels are off the ground. Or I'm guessing this is going to have some kind of mechanism that sways it, pulls it up. I'm guessing that's what the hydraulic ram's for there. So anyway, all very interesting, all very nice. It's got like a pulley thing here, so I'm guessing there should be some cable on there. I haven't done any research on it, but I'll have a look online and see what colours they should be and how beat up they should be. If they're aluminium or steel, do they rust or whatever? We'll sort of make it. I've got to build the other one up there as well. So it's a lot of work in that. A very, very flimsy, lot of work. I suggest your extra thin quick setting all the way, and take your time, do a little bit, leave it, do a little bit, leave it. Don't try and build it all up, because there's the wheel, then you've got the actual bogie the wheel sat in, and that glues onto there, and then you've got this arm here is separate, and then you've got this pivot in here, and this pivot here is separate, and it all glues on there. It's all very, very flimsy. So yeah, engines are done. As you can see, radiators go on the front of the fan is part of the radiator, so that goes on there, and then the radiator is going to slot into the chassis like so. Now I would suggest, as I've had to do on mine, I would suggest sanding every face on the radiator to thin it out, open up the grooves in the chassis, and it's pretty much a rule with a lot of the parts on this kit. They are a very nice fit, but they're a little bit snug. So you know, rather than put anything under stress, just sort of have it so it's a nice fit, and it doesn't quite fall out on its own, but you know, it goes in. I've replaced these front parts here. I think they were part number C12. They're on the sprue. They're not long enough, so I've replaced them with a bit of 0.8 plastic rod, because when you go to put the engine in, the front of the engine actually kind of sits on there almost by the look of it. So it needs to be sort of nice and strong. It's no good having it, because it really, with the old part in there, it really was flimsy, because it was barely touching on one side and you could just flick it off. So I've replaced that with a bit of plastic rod, cut it to a couple of millimeters longer, and then just put it in. You can do that after the chassis is built. So that's the engines taken care of. Yeah, fuel tanks, a little bit of seam work to do around the edges, which is, you know, the norm. Bit of seam work around where the fuel cap goes in. You can see there I've got Mr. Surfacer, and I've given it the Mr. Kind of leveling treatment to get it out. So again, we'll see how that looks under primer. You've got the battery or toolbox goes on here. Again, seam work on the sides, and then basically just when you look down the front, make sure the bottoms of those are square and they're not sort of, you know, sat like this or like that or whatever. You want them flat, square to the ground. And then go on. Put front shock absorbers, bit of cleanup required on them. Everything requires a bit of cleanup. There's a sort of seam line on everything. There's no real mould mismatch. It's just a few seam lines. And as I say, it's like square holes for this need to be opened up. Not because they're too small, because they're flashed over. Same here. These holes need to be opened up because they're flashed over. And but other than that, it's certainly not a beginner's kit, but it's a great little kit to sort of, you know, hone your skills on, because you know, if you take your time, if you stick by the rules of take your time and don't force anything, you should end up with a very nice model, because on the whole the plastic's nice, the detail is nice, and the fit is nice, but sometimes the fit's a little bit too nice, if you know what I mean. So next we've got to get the engine and everything painted. Now I'm not going to make too much fuss about it, because you're not going to see it. Once the cab goes on, you're not really going to see the engine at all, other than looking up underneath. And I'm certainly not going to be cutting the bonnet off or anything, because there's no bulkhead detail. We're back to the Meng M911. But don't talk about that. I'm going to put the air cleaner on the engine as well before we actually fit it. And then we've got this box here to go on. So what I'm going to do now is basically look through the instructions and get everything on that's painted black. Because basically with these Russian trucks, as a rule of thumb, you can basically go chassis, axles, suspension, everything, steering, wheels, everything black, all the other bodywork green. And that's basically, if you're going for, you know, Russian sort of general standard issue, then you can't really go wrong. Although if you look on here, they're telling you to paint certain bits and pieces, paint that flat black. They're telling you to paint this toolbox here, or battery box, whatever it is, flat black. But then when you look in the colour instructions here, they're green. There's the fuel tank there, green. There's your box there is black. The chassis is all black and everything, but they've got the wheels here in green. I think the wheels should be black. But I don't know what it's like on the front. Yeah, the wheels are black on the front, look, so we shall see. But not sure about the fuel tank colour, if that should be green or black. But again, it's your model and it's a Russian vehicle. I mean, I've looked at lots of pictures of the AP, what is it called, APA5D, and most of them seem to have a different colour back. It's like it's almost like, if I could just pick up two greens here I've got to hand. No, they're not different enough. It's almost like that. It's almost like the cab is kind of olive drab colour and the back is like a NATO green colour. I know it's not, it'll give you Russian green, but it's almost like the actual back part, the power unit part of it is like NATO green and the rest of it is Russian green. So, don't know. Fill your boots. I mean, there's loads. If you look online, you'll find lots of pictures of these trucks, and you'll see them in all sorts of different colours. Even, you know, because they're sun bleached or because they're brand new, you'll see them from dead matte and covered in rust streaks and faded and everything to really glossy, high shine, brand new sort of thing. So no one can tell you you've done it the wrong colour, particularly not the cargo truck anyway. So as I say, I'm going to push forward, get some more building done, and then I'll come back. Thinking ahead, looking at these tyres, as you know, I love these tyres in this kit. Even though they're vinyl, they're a very hard vinyl, but they've got some very beautiful detail on them, and they do look very nice. Now, I think I'm going to have to heat them up. I've already talked about that, but I want to get rid of this glossiness. I know before you start shouting in the comments, tyres are glossy, but for models and that, we dull them down, and if they're a few years old and they've been in the sun, they do dull down. But rubber tyres are, one thing, they're not black, and two, they are quite shiny, so when they're new. So anyway, there's something on that one, I can't get it off. What is it? Anyway, I've cleaned these off with some Mr. Colour Leveling Thinners on a cotton bud, and I'm painting them with this, which is new to me, LP65 Tamiya lacquer paints, and I'm thinning it quite heavily with the lacquer paint retarder type, and you can see the difference. They look bloody gorgeous when they're painted. You know, you don't need resin wheels for this one, guys. So, you know, as long as that paint will stay on and they go on the rims without it all coming off. I mean, it doesn't seem to rub off at the moment. It's only been on there about 10 minutes, so we'll see. Hopefully, I know the MRP paint tends to work on vinyl tyres, so if this doesn't work, at the end of the day we could always try something else. But I thought, I've got enough paint mixed up, I'll just paint them all and see what happens, and then what we can do is dry brush the treads and bring them up nicely, because, you know, these tyres are stunning for vinyl tyres. They're the best. I will go as far as to say these are the best tyres I've ever seen in a kit. You know, generally, as you know, we have to replace wheels, especially if we've got bloody vinyl tyres. They're such a pain. I like the Bronco Star where they have the wheels all made up in parts, but when you put a dab of glue on, they tend to split open, so whatever. But anyway, I'm sticking these on I've cut down a spatula, and I'm just sticking them on there like that, and then get a coat of paint on them. So I'll go and paint these three, and then I'll do some more chassis painting, and we'll see how it all comes out. Right, we've got the wheels painted now. They've had a couple of coats of the LP... which colour was it? LP5, which is the semi-gloss black. So sprays very, very nicely using the Tamiya lacquer thinner retarder type, and I get all this from Premium Hobbies down in Weston-super-Mare. So if you're interested in getting these lacquer paints, which I would seriously suggest you do, then look them up on Premium Hobbies and get them. And don't forget, you can use a code NMB10, that's Nigel's Modelling Bench 10, and you'll get 10% discount. So worth having. So let's just try this. If you remember, we painted these tyres, these hard vinyl tyres, with a with the Tamiya LP. Get which one it was now. LP65 rubber black. So I'm going to try and put this wheel onto this tyre without damaging the paint. So let's just see if it's possible. Okay, so that's popped in there. It doesn't seem to have damaged the paint. And if you remember, I said I was going to heat these tyres up to make them softer because they don't seem to want to play ball. And it looks like that may be a wise decision because it doesn't seem to want to go. And it kind of feels like I might break the... It feels like I might break the wheel rim if I try without doing that. Cool. They are very, very hard, which is, you know, it's a bad thing for assembly, but it's a good thing for the detail that's on them. When you look at them, they are really, really nice. So I think I might just go and run this under the hot tap and see what happens. These are lacquer paints, so they should be fine in and around water. Just wonder if I can slide something in there to help it go. Maybe a cocktail stick. It'll probably just snap it off. What I don't want to do, if I can help it, is scratch the paint. Let me go and run this under the hot tap and see what happens. Well, that worked. That worked amazingly well. I just ran it under the hot tap and it just pushed together beautifully. The only problem is now we may well have water inside the tyre. So it may be better to use a hairdryer or something to warm the tyres up. But certainly they do respond to being warmed up. They become a lot softer and go together easier. The other thing to note, I've noticed in the instructions, when they tell you to fit the tyres, they tell you to fit them the wrong way round. Okay, they've got the, if you look at the tread, here, if you call that an arrow, it's pointing up. That's how they tell you to fit them. The arrow should point down. As they've got it on the front of the box, they've also got it the wrong way round. You can see here they've got the arrow, the chevron facing upwards. It should actually point downwards. Every single photograph I can find online has them fitted so that this would be the right hand front wheel, if you like, so that the tread is actually pointing down. And also when you fit these tyres, make sure you do get them all the right way around, because getting them off again is going to be a complete and utter nightmare. So I think I might get a hairdryer and see if I can apply some heat that way. And there we go, all done. What I ended up doing in the end was put them on the radiator in the house with the heating on. Just got them sort of, you know, just pliable enough to get them on. It's hard work. If you have small fingers or you don't have much strength, you'll have to get them hotter than I did. But maybe hot water will be your answer. But the trouble is then is, as I say, you're going to have water trapped in the tyre and it may come out when you start doing your weathering and stuff, and I don't know, maybe it looked good, who knows. But there we go, that's them all done. Got the spare for that side in there, so they look lovely. And I've also been working on these spare wheel carriers. They need a lot of work in the seams. Also, you can see here there's a piece of plastic card, there's a gap in that one on both of them, so I assume every kit is going to be the same. Also the ends, it's a bit unfortunate, the ends where they butt up, they're kind of, instead of being a flat face to face, they're kind of like this. So what I've done with them is put sprue glue in them, let it go hard, and then gone over with Mr. Surfacer. It seems I put sprue glue and Mr. Surfacer and everything these days, and then just go in and just sand them out. So and they look really, really nice when you put the wheels inside them. The wheel will go in. You just give it a little squeeze. There we go, and they look really, really good with that wheel and tyre combo in there, as you can see. And these wheels and tyres, I'm really impressed with them. They look fantastic. You know, 48 scale is just such a lovely scale for vehicles. 72nd is like a bit small, but 48th is just lovely. Really, really nice. Because obviously the smaller the scale, the finesse you get in the detail and stuff. The bigger you get, the more sort of toy-like things get, if you know what I mean. I've also painted both the chassis. I haven't painted the very back end because that's what I was holding. We've also got to put the tail lights in there, but they're both done. again, they're done in the LP5. So I thinned it down heavily, sort of 70% thinners, so I could really get in all the nooks and crannies. If you are new to the hobby, when you are doing stuff like this where you want to get in all the nooks and crannies, because there's a couple of bits in there I've missed, you need to make sure you get all the angles. Thin your paint more than you normally would, because obviously when you spray here, you're going to be painting everything in there. But when you come around this angle, you're going to be more paint, and then this angle, more paint. And if you have your paint too thick, you'll find a thick build-up. So have your paint nicely thinned, and then it will go on lovely. These holes in the chassis here need to be opened up for these to go in, and this peg here needs to be shortened. So so that goes in like that then. That's going to be painted green. So that's going to sit on there like that, and then the cab will be in here and the back will be on there. So there we go. I started taking parts off of the actual cab base, and I found we've got raised lines in here. I'm not sure, I need to do some research. I'm not sure if this was a metal bed or wood, but obviously if it's wood they wouldn't be raised, so I need to do some research on that. So there we go. The intention was at the beginning of this video was to do the build and everything all in one. I think it's just going to go on so long, it'll take forever to upload, and it's going to be quite boring. So what I'm going to do, I think, is do the chassis, engine and everything, get that all painted and then built up. So that'll be part one, and then part two will be both the bodyworks. So you've got both the cabs and the rear, and then part three will be decals and weathering and stuff. So I need to get my ass in gear and get this done. Right, pushing forward. I can't remember where we left off in the last segment, but in this segment I've added some steering gear to the chassis. All those holes, well, both those holes needed opening up on mine. As you know, in the last bit I talked about, we've already painted the chassis. That's done with the LP5 semi-gloss black, and it is beautiful finish, lovely colour, lovely satin look to it, so really nice. So I'll go in and blow them in when I do this back end. If you remember, before I did the back end I had to do the lights. So I've done the tail lights. So these are the ones, these are from Sprue B. So these were actually started off as brown plastic. What I've done, they have been painted with LP48 sparkling silver, which is a very, very bright silver colour. This is the sparkling silver here. And then on the fronts here I've done the orange and silver for the front side lights. Done that on both of them. And then, as I say, these are the tail lights. Now if you look at the instructions, they would have you believe that you've got to do them all red, but I've looked online, found some images, and indeed the outer section of each light is actually an indicator, so it's amber. So they've been painted over with the, is it X25, X26 and X27, clear red and clear orange. We have to do the same on the fenders on here, and then there's a bit on the sides of the bonnet as well that has to be done with the orange, some reflectors. Or maybe it's those on the door I'm thinking of there, but anyway, we'll have to do them after it's painted. So we're going to get these lights glued on now, and then we can mask them up perhaps and spray the chassis. Maybe I'll brush paint the back of the lights black. I've gone around the edges with black. Maybe I'll brush paint the backs of them black, and then just wrap a piece of masking tape around the whole thing. But we need to be a bit careful because they're going to be extremely flimsy and easy to knock off. There's also another couple on here, which while you're at it you may as well do them at the same time. These here go on the back of the actual cargo bed, so save you getting your silver and red and orange and everything. Again, just make sure it's all covered in one. But it's very strange actually. I'm not even sure if it's correct. I need to do some checks. But what they're showing here in their colour callouts, on the actual APA unit, they've just got the rear lights here, which is fine. You'd understand that to be good. But on here, they're showing they've got rear lights on the chassis and rear lights on the cargo bed. So I'm not sure if that's right. I need to check my references again. There is actually a lovely picture. If you put Ural 4320 walk around in Google, you'll get some pictures. It looks like one that's just been freshly painted. It almost looks new, but it looks like it's probably been freshly painted, and that'll give you some great images of colours and everything. So I'm going to push on, do some research, see if they're supposed to be on there, and then we'll go from there. Sure enough, if I remember, I'll put the picture up and show you now, but basically you can see the actual cargo truck doesn't have these rear lights here, so two of them can go in the spares box. The cargo truck just has those two there, it doesn't have these, which I suspected while I was talking to you, looking at this. I'm surprised I didn't think of it before, but it means I can pick the best two of these, because I know that on one of them On this one here I went a bit crazy with the black and went a bit too far up the lenses, so I can pick the best two of those and use them now. So I'm going to push on and start to get this thing up together. Right, pressing forward, chassis pretty much complete now. Added all the steering gear, as you can see. Added the tail lights to one of the chassis for the what was it called? The APA 5D. I keep forgetting. You see, you got the tail lights there, and they look really nice. They were done with the silver and the orange and red, if you remember. Got the wheels on. Now the wheels are pretty difficult to fix because they're very, very sloppy on the axles, but they do give you the chance, as you can see, to add some steerage into the front wheels. So you can see I've got both chassis there, and I've got them steering different amounts in opposite ways. So keep everything vertical with some steel blocks or boxes or something, but you're going to need something round to put in between. So what I did, I had some old tyres, and basically because the centre, this tube here that is the inflation thing, sticks out just beyond, if you just put the block there, the wheel won't sit square, so you need to get another tyre. And what I did, if I could just show you here, I got some of these, and these are just some tyres from the spares box from another model, and I placed those on the tyre like so, okay, and then what I was able to do then was put the steel block, obviously with two of those in there, up against it. It was actually squeezing the actual full circumference of the tyre rather than just pushing on the centre. So that was what I did, and then got everything square and let it dry. I used the extra thin quick setting, put plenty in there, and let it really sort of get its teeth into the plastic, and then leave it for sort of 10-12 hours to cure. And that way I've got wheels that have ended up, as you can see, they're all in line, they're all vertical and everything, and all good. Also note the tread pattern points forwards, not backwards as in the box and the instructions. So happy with that. One issue, the track rod here that goes across, both of mine on the sprues were seriously deformed, probably during the ejection process from the mold tool. So both of mine were deformed, and they were both exactly the same, so I'm assuming that all the kits are going to be the same. But also the track rod is too long. It doesn't really fit very well at all. It kind of wedges pretty firmly into the wheels, so it kind of helps with putting it in, because you can just wedge it in there and then glue it. But yeah, it can't really be seen, so hey ho, but it's there, and there's no location for it whatsoever. Like you've got, you know, no location at all, so another little bit of a letdown there. At the end of this build, I think I'll list all the faults by page number in the instructions and go through it all. But basically, I'm really happy with that. I think it looks bloody lovely for, you know, 48 scale. It's pretty well detailed. You know, it's not covered in bolts and rivets and stuff, but it's there. The tyres are gorgeous. The wheels are gorgeous. They all sit down lovely and flat. On one of them, I had to remove one of the front wheels and just shift it up, because if you remember in here, you've got the the end of the axle's like this, and then you've got the pin in the wheel, and it's got a bit of play. Sorry, it's got a bit of play in it, so I actually unglued it. I just put more glue on there to soften up what was already there, and then had to move the wheel because I found on one, I can't remember if it was this one or that one, but this wheel was too low down, so I just moved it up because it was keeping everything else up in the air. But pretty much now I think we're all good. What I might do is just get a piece of coarse wet and dry and just put it flat on the bench and just slide over it like that, and that'll just take any high spots off the tyres, and it will make sure we've got the contact on the ground. So so there we are. Now, I said at the beginning I was going to do a build. I think this is going on so long I'm going to split it. So I think what I'm going to do is split it here, as in having the chassis done. But before I actually release any videos or anything, I'm going to make sure the model is finished. So we'll have part 1, which will be the chassis and everything. Part 2, I think, will be the bodywork on both models. And then part 3 will be decals and weathering. So, or maybe everything will just be in 2 parts, we shall see. But overall, really happy with that. I've got to paint the engines. I've got all my bits and pieces over here now. You can see I've been working on. There's ejector pin marks in the cab roof. There's ejector pin marks in the cab fenders. There's ejector pin marks in the doors. These also need a lot of work to make them fit, and I'll show you. I've done one. and I'll show you how to do the how I've done it on the other one. So there we go, guys. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon, well, very soon, with part 2 and maybe part 3, or just part 2, I don't know, we'll see. So thanks for watching, see you all soon. Bye for now.